Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today we are talking about torments of obsession. Yes, we need to know more about this epidemia, which is obsession. Can you believe it? It is an epidemia. And we need to understand more how it affects all of us, including spiritists. We are not exempt of the spiritual influence that affects humanity as a whole. And we are going to get to know more about it. And to help us go through this important book and this important topic, we have several people here with us in Kardec Radio's team, but mostly our dear friend who is also at Kardec Radio's team, Dr. Marco Magalhães from the Spiritist Group in Canada. It's the Spiritist Society of Toronto, actually, with Sandra Mussi and Joe Mussi, his wife Joyce Magalhães, and many friends. We are going to be here talking about this important book that really makes a difference in helping us understand how we can prevent and or remedy. In the light of Spiritism, let us not forget, Spiritism is a promised consoler. There is no judgment and there is no final sentence. We're all just like Saul. Saul became somewhat a criminal, and not because he wanted, because he firmly believed he was right in persecuting Christians, the followers of Jesus. One day he realized he was wrong, and he made it up. He really turned around and faced the consequences and built a beautiful journey. This is an inspiration for all of us, because mistakes we all make. But are we going to give up, or are we going to stand tall and walk forward, face the consequences, practice our humility, and say, I'm going to begin again? So let us all now dedicate this moment to really understand more why this is so important. Life is not without rules. There are spiritual laws in the universe, and Allan Kardec, our dear good fire Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, he brings to us several different nuances of the law that rules our lives. Amongst them is in question and answer 638. In one of the answers to Kardec's questions, the illuminated minds say that people who know more become guiltier when they commit evil because they have a better understanding of it. They are not feeling guilty because somebody else is telling them so, but because in their unconscious. Question and answer 621. The laws of God are in our conscience, and we need to meditate, pray, instruct ourselves to really rescue the awareness of these laws like we're doing right now. So there's no way and chance that today I get to know how to read, and then I'm going to tell myself, I'm not going to read now. Because the minute I say I'm not going to read it, I just read it. That's how it works. So, and then he follows in another beautiful question. As we're talking about our lives, what is imperative here? Brother X tells us quite clearly in one of his books, Lázaro Redivivo, he says, which is not translated yet, he says, if we want to prepare ourselves for the spiritual life, because we're going to go there sooner or later, which is the real life, all I can tell you, he says, is do as much good as you can and cultivate a clear conscience. Period. He says, untie your hearts from the bonds to lower passions. And then Allan Kardec, in that line of thought, he also asked another question to the illuminated spirits that made me very enlightening to us. 642 of the Spirit's book. He says, in order to be pleasing to God and to ensure our future situation, is it enough simply not to do what is evil? Because some people say, I'm not doing any evil. And the illuminated spirits say, no. All must do good to the best of their abilities, for all will answer for all the evil that has resulted from the good they left undone. Oh, wow. That's quite a shock. And to complement that answer, we're going to discuss with Dr. Magalhães and other friends here. We're going to share with you that in answer to question 988, the illuminated minds say, any intentional inactivity during life and uselessness is always fatal to your future happiness. Any intentional inactivity during life and uselessness is always fatal to your future happiness. These are some of the information that we cultivate now as a background for us to meditate on why obsession can hit us quite strongly. We're going to discuss this and much more. Before we go to our first break and come back with Dr. Magalhães to discuss about this phenomenal book, Torments of Obsession by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, through Divaldo Franco, we want to share with you. If you are out there in one of the 60-plus countries that are listening to us, we would like to remind you the Spiritist magazine is now available not only in digital form, being accessible in all different computers, smartphones, tablets, but it is also available in print. And you can go to our website, thespiritistmagazine.com, and get to know more on how you can get your printed magazine. It's a collaboration with hpmagcloud.com. We hope you enjoy it, share the news, and get to know more about how you also can help us. Because, it's a lot of work, for sure. And all we need at this point, more than anything else, is help. If you want to help, write to us, info@thespiritistmagazine.com, or go to our website and send us a message through our website. Also, Kardec Radio is here in a beautiful bridge of collaboration and partnership also with Bezerra Online Web Radio. Bezerra Online Web Radio is retransmitting now live all of our shows and on demand as well. Enjoy that beautiful program that our friends, the director Luis Salazar, has been putting together with his team. And the programs are in other languages as well, Portuguese, Spanish, and in English. It's a beautiful venue of opportunity for learning, instructing, and enlightening our minds, giving us strength and nourishment to go forward in this life. Dear listener, are you looking forward to know more about what are the cases that Dr. Miranda reported through Divaldo Franco in this book? We're going to listen to cases that happen in the afterlife. What happens when we make decisions that really impact us, not only here, but over there? We're going to get to know more. You're going to listen to the cases and the discussions. And if you want to join us, we hope so, you can either send us an email at kardecradio@gmail.com, or you can send us, a text, or you can also call us directly here in the show, only if you're listening to this live, 858-769-4705, and we are here open to listen from you. Let us go to our first break. When we come back, Obsession by Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
Torments of Obsession. Dear listener, this is actually a book that was psychographed by the dear medium and renowned speaker and ambassador of peace, Divaldo Franco. Through his hands, the enlightening mind of Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda wrote to all of us in the year of 2000 and published in the year 2001 this phenomenal collection of information. It's being actually translated by us at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore as we're studying it every Thursday. And you will be able to get a hold of it as soon as we're done with the work. For the time being, we want to share with you that this is a marvelous collection of information that really we need to know. And to discuss more about this, we are inviting our dear friend Marco Magalhães to discuss with us. Hi, Marcos. How are you? Thank you for being here with us at Radio.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here.
You know, Marco, they say that obsession is an epidemic. And throughout the book, and not only in this book, all the Spiritist books talk about obsession as one of the gravest diseases of the human mind on the earth, and people are rarely aware of it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how, if you look carefully, obsession is probably involved in almost all representation of diseases that we have nowadays. But again, science and all of us collectively do not really pay attention to it. I think when people start to realize that, even the medical treatments are going to change dramatically, as they are changing in some institutions in places like Brazil, for example.
Exactly. And for those who are listening to us for the first time and are not acquainted with the definition, we want to remind them that Allan Kardec defined obsession in chapter 23 of the Medium's book as a persistent negative influence of a mind, a spirit, onto another. But it also occurs from an incarnate person to another. If we're thinking negatively about somebody to somebody else, constantly and for a while, we're sending mental darts, as André Louis says, and we're creating this mental currents, as it says, of destructiveness, as he talks about in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship. So, Marco, we know that obsession is also something that happens even to spiritists, right?
Exactly, and I think this book, especially some cases that we're going to talk about today, describe it really well, especially because, not only spiritists, but everyone that's studying and, is somehow getting to know a little bit more, because knowledge is something that, it's very powerful, and you have to get good use of it, and I think that's a very big point where, obsessions may start, when we have the knowledge and we can't use it for the right.
Exactly. So, Marco, right now we're going to listen to an excerpt of the book, which is actually the preface by Dr. Miranda, when he summarizes the intricacies of obsession, and then we're going to discuss a little bit more about it, okay?
Okay.
Torments of Obsession. Obsession rides on the earth because of the inferiority of some spirits that dwell therein. Earth is a world of trials and expiations, as explained by Allan Kardec, and it is also a blessed school of recovery and rehabilitation, in which obdurate spirits enroll to grow towards happiness by contribution of the afflictions that are indispensable. In spite of the alert given to the fulfillment of spiritual and moral duties that are part of the growth within each individual, only some choose a healthy behavior, which is preventive psychotherapy for any distress to which they could be subjected. However, those who become careless in their commitments of self-enlightenment and peace, engaging in the trails of abuse of the organic emotional, and mental faculties, they sadly compromise themselves before the sovereign laws of life through regression and disrespect to the siblings of evolutionary march. Therefore, it is not surprising that the inferiority of those who suffer injustice and betrayal, deceit, and wickedness load themselves with the coward instruments of revenge and persecution when divested of the carnal clothing to avenge those which, in their turn, were the cause of their suffering. However, had they understood the need of love, they would outweigh the adverse events, excusing their opponents and giving them an opportunity to repair the attack perpetrated against the divine consciousness. Nevertheless, as they also have primitive feelings, they engage in vengeance and throw themselves in the rough fields of obsession, in which they also become prey of unhappy passions that they combat in their rivals. Intelligence and feeling show that it is much easier to be loving, to be faithful, to build peace, to implement duty, to build our own happiness, and to contribute with the happiness of others than to sow trouble, to cultivate sorrow, to spread hatred and resentment. Nevertheless, selfishness and cruelty, which still exist within human beings in general, account for the unhealthy behavior, propelling them to follies and misfortunes to which they will become responsible in their future misfortune. Their refusal to elevated sentiments make them embark in states of tumultuous despair instead of ascending to the plateau of harmony that awaits them in fullness. While the state remains in the human behavior, obsessions turn into real scourge for all those who let them be imprisoned within their chains. Obsession presents itself with many disguises, becoming increasingly more serious in today's society that stubbornly refuses to recognize or to consider it. Religious people attached to unreasonable fanaticism dismiss obsession as they believe to have credentials to remedy the situation wherever it manifests itself through the power of faith and to the authority they assign to themselves. Academicians bound to asceticism in regard to the immortality of the spirit in the various areas in which they work, especially in so-called sciences of the soul, refuse to accept obsession and convert the human being to a reductionist and materialistic situation that death consumes and annihilates in it. Non-religious people who are intoxicated by the illusion of the senses or are boastful claim to be immune to this insidious disease due to their indifference to high spiritual phenomena that multiply by the bulk and are nevertheless disregarded. Crowds, uninformed of the reality of life, take part in the banquet of irresponsibility, sadly pledging outrageous and immoral attitude, generating future calamities for their members. And even countless adherents of Spiritism with deep knowledge and guidance often opt for levity and arrogance, staying behind where also stay those who were deceived, cheated, mistreated by their folly. Life always calls to repair everyone who disturbs the superior statues. Everyone who defrauds the order will suffer the consequences of the thoughtless attitude. Every human being carries the inner cross that either leads to suffering or to transform it into an instrument of ascension, depending on how he or she behaves during the terrestrial journey. The sufferings, which take spirits by surprise after undressing from the physical garment, are a natural outgrowth of their own acts, as well as the joys and blessings they enjoy. Therefore, the sufferings are not severe penalties imposed by God, but a natural process of reparation. The joys and blessings are not free concessions offered to the privileged. Love prevails in everything, and it provides to the wrongdoers sublime mechanism to repair the errors and build in goodness, which is at everyone's reach. Therefore, we can say that obsession can be considered as the return shock of the unhappy action perpetrated against someone who has gone mad of pain and upheaval, requiring urgent and appropriate treatment.
Yeah, dear listener, it's about obsession. It's all about this epidemic, and the mechanisms of obsession are quite intriguing and amazing. So we would say here that for all of us, it's important to understand that we should not play with it. And I say this because many people come and say, it's not going to happen to me. It doesn't happen to me. And we tell, pride is the greatest door for obsession. When we say this, we are probably already in the traps of obsession. And the best way to go is the therapy of the gospel. As says Dr. Miranda. Marco, what impressed you the most in the words that we just heard from Dr. Miranda in this part of the preface?
Right, there are a few sections there I found just amazing, and one of the most impressive parts of this segment is actually when he says that there are many disguises on obsession, and the reason why I think it's so important because there's so many people around that they're going through process of obsession or actually getting into the traps like you just said. But they try to convince themselves that what's happening is not at all related to that. It's something normal, that society accepts it, so that's what you have to do. So it's a disguise. So a lot of people start to get into the trap just by feeling that everything is normal. They're accepting their wrong behavior, and they don't even understand that they're actually going to this trap of obsession.
Exactly, and it talks about, as you said, different disguises, and it talks also about the point that people don't take responsibility for their actions. They want to go by their lives doing things here and there. Let's say, for example, I got in another Spiritist book, The Case of a Lawyer, and he was going through... he was going to take care of a case of a couple who was going to be divorced, and the firm was going to get like $200,000 just for that case. But when this lawyer got to know of the case, he said, "But this justifies reconciliation. We need to reconcile the parties before we actually." Go through the divorce." But the owner of the firm was like really upset about it. And when he succeeded talking to the judge and convincing the judge to talk to the husband and wife to reconcile them, and succeeded because they really thought twice and didn't go through with the divorce, the owner of the firm got this lawyer fired because he thought about the money first and he cared less for the happiness of these people. So here we're talking about how can we go by a happy life if we are daily planting apparently small seeds, but seeds are small, but they still hold the potential of a big tree. So the small actions of today really can mount to storms in the future in our lives, right, Marcus?
Exactly, and I think it's very important what you said, and we have many examples in other books, like the book The Messengers by Andrea Louise, showing similar stories. And what I think is that we've been taught for many centuries to not take responsibility for our actions, and now what we're starting to see is that, well, we have to, because everything we do, every action has a reaction, and we have to learn by going through the steps of evolution. And I think when humankind starts to understand more deeply what that means, then everyone's going to start to move faster in evolution, start to understand things better.
Exactly. So this book now, Marcus, in the second part of it, it talks about the book in itself, which is a mediumistic book by the spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. I'm going to tell people now who was this amazing mind in that reincarnation. Of course, he's living and probably very close to all of us. Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda was born in the state of Bahia, Brazil, in the year of 1876 and discarnated in the city of Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, where Divaldo Franco currently lives, in 1942. He was a physician by profession and a respected spiritist. While incarnated, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda became acquainted with Spiritism in 1914 through the medium Saturnino Fávila, and in the same year he got to know the renowned spiritist José Petitinga. Thus, he started attending the current Spiritist Federation of the State of Bahia, founded in 1915. He then developed his commitment and directed mediumistic meetings and works. And since 1921, he took part in the board of directors of the Spiritist Federation of the State of Bahia, and he fulfilled that role until his discarnation. In 1950, the medium Francisco Cândido Xavier, or Chico Xavier, psychographed for Divaldo Franco a message signed by the very spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, who actually started psychographing books through Divaldo Franco 20 years later, meaning since 1970. And the topics he dedicates is about this obsession. He's an expert in the field, and he's going to tell us right now the reasons why he put together this phenomenal book. Let us listen to this now.
This book is one more cry of alert to our fellows in the physical trail so as not to neglect the duties which concern us in relation to God, others, and ourselves. Every seed of hatred left haphazardly along the way always turns into a plantation of unhappiness, providing a harvest of bitterness. Only love has the precious resource to provide harmony and joy of living. We gather in this work several experiences that we lived in the Hospital Esperanza, Hope, in our spiritual sphere, in which there are numerous hospitalized brothers who are bankrupt and failed in their commitment with their neighbor. They are in lamentable state of disturbance, some thirsty of revenge, others broken by avenging circumstances and factors of despair to which they subjected themselves during their reincarnation, after having abandoned their noble commitments, which were replaced by hallucination and the moral disturbance to which they engaged. In the psychiatric spiritual hospital, there especially are patients who were failed spiritists. They were rescued thanks to magnanimity of the benefactor Euripides Balsanufo, who built the hospital, given in the status of sanctuary for mental and moral health. He turns it with unmatched dedication, assisted by other dedicated servers of goodness and charity. Herein, we present the story of several lives and their real stories, hoping to sensitize those who honor us with their reading attention in order to help them to not allow disastrous compromises. The experiences that we collect will be useful to all individuals who are interested in their own personal happiness, because they will awaken to the high commitments with the cosmic consciousness and its spiritual guides before the physical rebirth. However, for those who know the luminous guidance of Spiritism, these accounts will be more vivid and penetrating as they demonstrate that belief is very important, but the living application of the codification postulates its urgent and cannot or should not be postponed. To many fellows in the Spiritist movement, our information will cause strangeness. To others, it will look like fantasies of a mind in disarray, just because our information is not found in its details in the basic works of the doctrine. They forget that the illustrious masters of Lyon said that he was not presenting either the first or the last word about the addressed topics, and he said that the future would take care to confirm what was recorded, extending it to or correcting the information that was at odds with science. As none of the doctrinal statements offered by Allan Kardec has never been overcome or deemed inaccurate thus far, it is fair to add new spiritual lessons, continuing the remarkable life experiences of the beyond, which are an admirable work of heaven and hell, tied up by his wise and vigorous quill. Hoping that our spiritual contribution can help any reader who honors us with his or her attention, as we are aware of responsibility that concerns us, we beseech the blessings of the sublime therapist to us all, his patients in recovery. Salvador, the 15th of January of 2001. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda.
So, dear listener, here we are about this phenomenal book. And you may be asking who Euripides Barçanufo is, the spirit who actually inspired Dr. Miranda to report the cases, because the Hospital Esperança was built by him under the supervision of higher spirits and the governor of the planet, Jesus Christ. Euripides Barçanufo was a renowned spiritist in Brazil and one of the greatest of all times. He is a living spirit who has been supervising the movement throughout the world. He was born in 1880 in a small city of Brazil in the state of Minas Gerais. The city is named Sacramento. And he became aware of Spiritism by reading the book Depois da Morte by Leon Denis, which is not translated in English yet. And once in a Spiritist meeting, he received a message from a spiritual guide who convinced him on the importance and beauty of Spiritism. He devoted the rest of his life to work in several ways in accordance with the teachings of Spiritism. He also dedicated his life to the Spiritist group Hope and Charity, founded in 1905, and he founded the school Allan Kardec 2 years later. He was also an expert in many things. He became a politician, not only a teacher, a spiritist, a renowned medium, but a politician who helped many people in his community. He died quite young in 1918, leaving us a great example of a life. And in the afterlife, in this book, we get to know that he asked for higher permission to really bring to us accounts of mostly people who become acquainted with these teachings and decide intentionally or not to not do anything with it. So in that regard, we'd like to share with you that there's much more ahead of us. We're going to go for a short break. When we come back, Margot and I will be discussing more on some of the cases of this book. Stay there because it's fascinating.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio. Live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.edicofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we'd like to remind you that the Spiritist magazine is available to you in print. You just go to our website, spiritistmagazine.com, get to know more about it. It's very easy, straightforward. Share the news because the recent issue of the magazine is unforgettable. From the cover to the articles, things that can help all the families, everybody around the world. Share the good news because we become multipliers of goodness on the earth. Because, by the way, Allan Kardec said in one of the questions he asked to the spirits, 642, he got the following answer: all must do good to the best of their abilities, for all will answer for all the evil that has resulted from the good they left undone. I will never forget, Marcus, the other day I was driving. Somebody has bought a magazine in Singapore, previous issues of the magazine that we have printed and are still here in the headquarters in the Spirit side of Virginia. And I was going to work in Baltimore. And I had the envelope with me to place in the mail because we do it ourselves. And before I left Virginia, the mentor said, Vanessa, go to the post office before and mail it today before you go to work in Baltimore. And I said, well, but there is a post office right at the corner of the University of Maryland, so it's not a problem for me. In an hour and a half or two, I'll be there. And he said, Vanessa, remember, do all the good you can do because we will be responsible for the good that was left undone. Because what if it gets there an hour later of an important decision on this person's life? And I was like, wow, isn't that right? Okay, I'm going to do it. So there you have it, Marcus, something that I was learning, and sometimes we take for granted thinking that it's so less of importance, and it becomes imperative in our lives. Have you had experiences similar to this, Marcus?
Yeah, I think we all have experiences that are very similar to this, and I can remember passages where similar things happen where I thought, maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I don't need to work late to finish this to do at the Spiritual Center tomorrow. I can just can do something else or something. And then when you go to present, and then you go and do the presentation, someone comes after you right after the presentation and says, Marco, that little thing you did in the end, that I was not going to do actually changed my day. And you're like, whoa, it was actually like another 5 minutes of work that I decided to do. It was not important for me at the time. I was completely oblivious to that. And then it really changed someone's life. And then you're like, maybe that's it. That's the message. We have to work harder. We have to do all the good we can, always. And stop thinking about ourselves too much. Because that's what we do all the time, right?
You're so right. I think you said the right words. Be more selfless. And that's what one of the psychotherapists who is talking to Dr. Miranda in this book describes the scenario there. So now they are visiting the people who really forgot about the best they could do. And they took for granted many things. And now they're there in the hospital. Thank God they're in the hospital because it could be worse not being there in the spiritual hospital. But they described that the environment of the hospital was so uplifting that it looks more like a resort, like a retreat place than an actual hospital. It's not depressive. It's not depressing. It's actually very soothing and calming and brings a lot of hope. So they are visiting one of these sections, the aisles of the hospital, in which they have 100 patients. And it's amazing, Marcus. They talk about statistics in this aisle of patients. They say that 40 of these 100 patients, meaning 40% of them, are in great recovery, whereas 60% are still in tormented condition due to the dramas that are looping in their minds, in their conscience. Isn't that striking?
That's actually striking, but I would actually add to that if you look in our society here of incarnates at this moment, what is the percent? Can we calculate the percentage of us that are actually going through similar things? Like, how many of us here incarnate are actually in full recovery from the mistakes we've done in the past? So I think the number would be actually, I think it would be less than that, actually, less than 40.
Exactly, and it's amazing. And here we talk about people, for example, who got to know of Spiritism. I mean, the cases reported in this book, it's not only for Spiritist workers, but for people who, how many people get to know of the teachings, and they simply say, you know what, they give it a shoulder and say, I have so much to take care of. It's so common nowadays in Spiritist centers. I'm so sad to say this. People come, they're working there, and then they get pregnant. And they say, oh, now I'm going to take care of my baby. And they probably will come back in 10 years. That's what I've been saying around, not only here in Baltimore, Virginia, but everywhere else. I talk to other friends. I don't know if in Brazil that's the case, probably not that much. But people go by taking care of their professional lives. Now they say, oh, I have a busy schedule. Now I don't have time because of my work schedule, or because of their PhD thesis, or because of this and the other. And they give excuses, and they don't commit at all. Right, Marcus?
No, exactly. And I think you probably know more than me about that, but in my experience, I think, and based on research that we can have access online, I think human mind is specialized in finding excuses. we really work hard, actually, to find excuses so we can live a more happy life with our full of mistakes and everything we've been doing wrong. And if you look carefully into that, you see that that's pretty much what we do every day. We try to find excuses for a lot of things that we actually could do better, but we don't do, and then we find an excuse for it.
And as you're saying, we think we're entitled to so many rights, probably because we forgot the list of deaths, of wrongdoings, whatever we want to name it, because these are just words compared to what they really are. We're talking about the list of deaths and wrongdoings we've done in previous lives, and then we come here feeling entitled to so many rights and few duties, if any. And in one of the chapters of the book, Torments of Obsession, Dr. Miranda reports to us that we forget that knowledge is not everything, because we needed to do the inner transformation, be very vigilant, and not forget, as he says, that all of us, we always have very difficult adversaries in the afterlife, not only incarnated, but in the afterlife. He says these are spiritual enemies that need much attention from us. And he says we really need, and he says witnesses and companions of terrestrial beings, meaning incarnated people, inspire us in our activities and become inseparable companions of our behavior. And of course, the good spirits, he says, they don't stop inspiring, interceding, helping us, offering protection, using all the resources possible to protect us and make us succeed. But in the end of the day, there is always free will at the end of the day. And that's when problems happen, such as the case of Evaldo. So, Marco, let us listen to this very short case of Evaldo, which is in the book, and then we come back to discuss more about it.
At Hospital Esperanza, founded by the devoted Euripides Bassanufo in the spiritual plane during the 1930s, a group of dedicated doctors and therapists were about to rescue Evaldo, who spent more than 10 years in extreme subjugation in lower zones. Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda describes Evaldo's status as unconscious and under a deep hypnotic trance, But most surprising of his condition is that he is encapsulated in a dark cocoon.
What is this cocoon?
Asked Dr. Miranda to Dr. Messer, the coordinating surgeon. Well, Evaldo's mind has created this cocoon due to his guilty conscience and self-punishing vibrations.
Why did that happen?
He created this cocoon to escape and hide from his own misery built especially in his last reincarnation. Before his last reincarnation, he spent 10 years being prepared to work both in spiritism and politics due to debts acquired in the previous lives. He reborn in a noble spiritist home. His mother was loving and devoted. He even got married to a good spiritist wife. But as soon as he became an influential politician, he claimed no time for spiritist commitments. He then quickly attuned to corrupted individuals and engaged in extramarital affairs. And the unexpected happened. His wife was taken by a fatal cancer. He got into deep depression once he realized the great damage he did to many lives. In 3 years, he marched quickly to death. After 10 years under spiritual obsession, he was rescued by our team of workers due to his mother's intercession. And here we are preparing for a very delicate surgery in which he will need a team of surgeons to free him from his cocoon and clog his own production of self-punishing guilt.
As Jesus said, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded.
Let us all be careful and preserve ourselves from doing evil and not fulfilling our spiritual commitment. So we supplicate for divine help, asking for protection and inspiration to walk into the difficult journey of our spiritual ascension. This case was extracted from Chapter 21, Experiência em Comum, in the book Tormentos da Obsessão, by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco.
Yeah, dear listener, it's not easy. And again, as the Emmanuel himself talks about in the book Missionaries of the Light, he says in the preface, quite fascinating, he says, we could tell you the La La Land of the spiritual realm. This is in my own words, of course. But we need to talk about reality here. And the reality is that on this earth, the inhabitants of the earth still face a great amount of suffering, and they have to take responsibility for it because we're not here to sugarcoat reality. And reality is like Evaldo. If we were here to do something and we don't, and on the reverse, we do worse than what we should have done, we're going to suffer, and nobody's going to punish us. But as we learn, he's the one that created this cocoon of guilt in his very spirit, imprisoning himself in guilt. Isn't that how we feel, Marcus, when we're feeling guilty, like we're imprisoned?
Exactly. I think that represents real well the situations we live as incarnate, and now with this episode, now we just describe in a discarnate world. But I mean, this starts very early on, as we are prepared many, many years to sign up for this new experience, and we come with all this energy and willing to do things, but then along the way things starts to fall down, and we open ourselves up for influences that will continue taking us away from what we are supposed to do. And again, our minds are always trying to, in a kind of a self-protection mode, trying to hide ourselves for all this baggage of things that we're bringing together, negative feelings, ideas, and thoughts. And I think that's exactly representing that.
Exactly. Marcos, what else do you think we should pay attention in regard to the case of Evaldo?
I think the case of Evaldo, as many other cases in this book, are particularly important because he was prepared to be a spiritist and a politician. We can refer to now coming back to our reality now. How many of us are prepared to be not only politicians but a good professional in many areas of research or clinicians or anything else? How many of us are prepared and are ready to come here and take on the responsibility of building a place where we can help other people? But then along the way, all those little things, it's easy to live an easy life. It's always hard to do the good work. Do the good work is not really absolutely easy. Requires you to do the work. But we tend to, no, I'm not going to help people today. I'm going to go out to have some fun, as our society understands fun. And things start to be, start to collapse from that time on, and we completely forget about all this, all these things that we have kind of promised to do, and we're prepared to do so.
Yeah, Mark, as you say, the way society understands fun, because if you talk to people who have been engaged into works of goodness, it feels good to be good, as Dr. Stephen Post found out in his research. It really is rewarding in itself. It feels good, it feels happy, and it's a more lasting fun and joy and happiness than anything else. It's like, for example, you go to the movie theater to watch a comedy, and it's like you laugh. When you're done, you go home, it's like, okay. It doesn't feel lasting. Whereas you go and help people out, or you either through a prayer, meditation, because some people think that helping out is only like give a piece of bread to the poor. But what about the poor in the mind? Praying for criminals, praying for people who are in need, who are feeling obsessed. Because, Marco, isn't that right? Our attitude before, even spiritists, the way they behave before people who are obsessed is not right. Majority are like this. Oh, that person is not obsessed. And then instead of being friendly, embracing, and kind and approaching, they are dismissing that person and sending them away. And is that really charity? Do we pray? Or all we do in the circles is like, oh, that person's obsessed. Oh, this person now is obsessed. That person is obsessed. And I see Chico Xavier, for example, as the greatest model for us in regard to that. One of his greatest partners, Valdo Vieira, partners in the work of Spiritism, of course, Valdo Vieira, they psychographed books together in a unique phenomenon of mediumship. And what do we observe there? When Valdo Vieira left, of course, Chico Xavier was distraught by what happened, but he didn't badmouth Valdo Vieira. He kept it quiet so much that nowadays it's almost like people who get to know of Chico Xavier barely know about Valdo Vieira. Why? Because Chico Xavier kept it quiet. He probably talked, as we know, to a few people who were in the closest circle, but he didn't perpetuate it. He didn't disseminate it to everybody, saying, you see what he did? That is wrong, and using and accusing. So Chico Xavier was really charitable with Valdo Vieira, and a good model for us on how to behave. And I bet he prayed for him as well, knowing that the day he wakes up, he's going to feel the pain.
Oh, I agree 100%. And you see, as you said, in spiritist centers today, you see that happen very often when people have problems. Other people inside the spirit center try to push them away instead of getting them closer, so you can share this loving and helping attitude with them. And I mean, the reason why Chico is such an incredible model for us, because he was practicing something very simple, which is the basis of everything we do. He was loving one another. as Jesus said to us so many times, and we still struggle to understand that. And we have, I think that this book we're talking about today, and many of these experiences are really a light, a sign that's shining on many spiritual centers around, trying to wake them up for our responsibility. And we're not immune. We're just human beings working in spiritual center. We've been trying, we've been learning, we've been trying to help others. We're not immune to obsessions, to fascinations, like many mediums are readily fascinated by spirits because they think they're too good. They think they're above other people, and that's when you open up doors, huge doors, for these influences, as the one we've seen in the case
of Evaldo. And in the case of Evaldo, he is an example also for us, right, Marco, about all the people who become acquainted with Spiritism and they don't engage. I mean, nobody's forced to. Spiritism does not prohibit anything, does not force anybody to do anything. There are no rituals, there's no initiation or anything. But once we learn about it, as we learned in Kardec's question and answer 638 of the Spirit's book, when people know more, they will become guiltier when they commit evil because they knew better. Also, the Spirit say it's not enough not to do evil, it's important to do good, because all must do good to the best of their abilities, for all will answer for all the evil they has resulted from the good they left undone. And finally, as you're saying, Marcos, it reminds me of this illusion of people in life, like, oh, I want to have an easy life. And Kardec asks, what happens to people who have this easy life? It's apparent like they don't have sufferings or anything. And the spirits are like, how many people do you know? Probably it's an appearance, because people actually, or they are running away from their duties, and they say, any intentional inactivity during life and uselessness is always fatal to your future happiness. Question and answer 988. And it reports to the time when Jesus was amongst us in the flesh, meaning incarnated. One of the passages reported by the Spirit, Brother X or Humberto de Campos in the book Good News or Boa Nova, through Chico Xavier, he talks about the trademark of the true Christian mind is goodwill. If people ask you, can you do this? And you say, oh, no, I can't. And if it's something good, it's like this. Let's cut it short. Can you give this piece of bread to that homeless? And I say, oh, no, now because I'm busy. Oh, why are you giving a piece of bread to that homeless? Has he asked you? Or I don't know why you're doing this. That lack of goodwill, that resistance to do good, that intentional inactivity is going to be fatal to our future happiness, say the Spirit minds in the book by Kardec, the Spirit's book in this case. Marco, in the case of Evaldo, another highlight that we want to discuss is the fact that he puts his professional life as his priority. I mean, in Spiritism, we have been learning how to balance our lives between family, work, and Spiritist work. All of us, right?
Exactly. And one thing that I've learned, and I can share, is that you can be a Spiritist everywhere, every time, every second, in any experience, even when you're working. Because helping others, like you said, is not like sharing bread to people. But if I have my professional life, and if I have understood and incorporated the teachings I believe in, even during my professional life, I'll be actually doing a lot of good work. So I think balancing also means that you have to really do what you believe and you've learned always, no matter what you're doing, even if you're a Spiritist center or if you're working or if you're with friends it really doesn't matter, because that's what we have to be what we believe in.
Exactly. You are so right. And that's the reason why we've been learning with the spirits that when somebody asks you for help, you help. It happened to Chico Xavier. He was going to work. He was late. It's a classical scenario that happened. It happens in everybody's life, and it happened to Chico as well. He was there. He was living a normal life. He had to go to work and do his spiritual work. And what happens is that he was late. And suddenly a woman called him in and said, Chico, please help me. I need clarification. He said, I can't, not now, because I'm late for work. And then Emmanuel, it's like he tapped him on the shoulder figuratively and said, Chico, I think you should go back and listen to her and help her before you're late anyway, so you better be late doing something good. And then he talked to her, helped her, and then he went back to work, on his way back to work. And Emmanuel said, now, Chico, look back to the woman you just talked to. And she was saying, God bless you, Chico. And from her mouth, rays of blessings and lights were coming towards him. And he said, imagine if she were here cussing you because you didn't give her the attention. So a good lesson for us about the fact that we're vibratory beings and we live in a world of vibrations. Marco, we're going to give a short break. When we come back, we have one more case, Leoncio's case in the book Torments of Obsession.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love, by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and psychographed by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're in the final parts of the show talking about Torments of Obsession. Of course, followed by this, we have the beautiful segments that were put together by our friends at Kardec Radio. But right now, as we're talking about the book, we are also going to emphasize how important it is, our responsibility as Spiritist practitioners. We have been talking this far about getting to know Spiritism and engaging or not, and the consequences when we don't become multipliers. We decide to live our lives and mind our own business and we don't feel like we need to do much. Our suggestion to those who are out there and excuse themselves, it's very classical, Marcus. I find this everywhere. I was listening to Rádio Boa Nova in Brazil the other day, and it's so classical. Talking to presidents of spiritist centers around the world, we see people who come, they engage, and then they don't like something. They don't even like the rules because they feel it's too much, or they don't like this or that or the other, and they say, I'm not going to come. And then they go home. They don't do anything else because sometimes they don't have other centers around. Or even in Brazil where there are thousands of centers, they say, I couldn't find a center that I feel good. That's a sign something is wrong. Right, Marcus?
Exactly. And I think personally that when you don't feel good in many places, it's probably that something inside you is flagging out. You probably don't feel good with yourself. You probably have major other problems that are impairing you from learning, from being active, from helping other people. Because we know it's good to do that. That's how we feel really good.
And Marco, one of the things that the spirits say, if you don't agree, if you think the rules are too much or they should be changed or there should be more rules, either you go to another center or you form a group. Because when you're really serious, you don't stay home doing nothing, giving excuses about this, that, or the other. You go and do better. Because it's really easy to come and complain and say, I don't like this, I don't like that, that's why this person is this person is that, and then you stay home in the leisure of your home, giving excuses that, it's so complicated. Why not challenge yourself, whomever you are, in all the 60-plus countries of the world? If you're listening to this, it's an invitation for your own goodness. Do not stay doing nothing, because any intentional inactivity will be fatal to your future happiness. You will regret. If you think people are doing bad, then do your best. Create a group, create a center, and there's no reason why you go find another center or create another center and shut down the doors to those people. There's no reason to be enemies either, right, Marcus?
Exactly, and I think we have amazing examples of that. We can go back to the book Paul and Stephen, and you look at the example of Paul. He believed in something. He knew he had to do it. He actually, although many people said, you know what, I can't do it. I don't understand why you're doing this. He said, I have to go out and spread the word. I have to reach people. I have to show people what I mean when I say that we have to love one another. And I think this is an amazing example. Now, we've been called so many times to do this. It's not the first time. And how many times we said no, and many of us are still saying no. And God loves us so much that He's still going to teach us a lot of things and bring us over again so we can say yes one day. So why don't we say yes now? I think that's the question.
Exactly. And by the way, Cynthia Fabretti has kindly just sent to us that she's here in the chat room of Kardec Radio. She sent to us a beautiful message that the Spirit Emmanuel wrote through Chico Xavier in the book Words of Eternal Life, or in Portuguese, Palavras de Vida Eterna. He says, every single one of them began asking to be excused. The first said to him, I bought a field and I need to go out and inspect it. Please excuse me. This is in Luke chapter 14, verse 18. And Emmanuel unfolds this explanation by saying, excuses have always been the escape hatch of those who abandon their obligations. Brothers and sisters who unfortunately slipped into delinquency often justify their actions with an impressive power of persuasion. However, this does not free their conscience of the needed atonement. Friends who ruin their bodies with vicious habits are capable of creating an elaborate system of excuses in an attempt to legitimize their attitudes which they have sadly embraced. They can bring to tears those who listen to them. However, they are nevertheless accountable for what they took pleasure in doing. And even now, when Spiritism is reviving the gospel and inviting all of us to create goodness on earth, many are the excuses used to disguise the defections. I am still too young. I am too old. I assumed on huge obligations and I cannot attend. My tribulations are enormous. Family obligations are increasing. Work does not allow me to engage in any spiritual activity whatsoever. I had that worry me. The kids take all of my time. I have too many problems. So many are the excuses, so invasive and so intense they are that even the most astute listeners end up being convinced that those poor people are indeed facing great suffering and that they are honestly incapable creatures. A mistake for our sympathy only sustains their avoidance of duty. Our brothers and sisters were invited to work on the vineyard of the light, however they are self-absorbed. They will eventually wake up to the truth as we did. Nonetheless, they are at this time tied to the ruinous consequences of their foolishness. They will not find any other way but to wait for the restorative opportunity of one or more incarnations. Wow. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for so promptly sharing this beautiful message with us by Emmanuel. So, Marcus, what he says at the end is probably what we're going to listen in Leoncio's case. What people don't understand is that the mistakes we do today, if we don't fix it today, if we're not diligent, like you said, Paul himself is the example of how he got back to track. We're going to face not only a small suffering there, because some people tell often, I don't care, I'll go to the lower zones anyways, or they say in Portuguese, eu vou para umbral, I'll go to the umbral. And they forget that going to places like this is not like a place, it's like a state of mind, meaning you're going to imprison yourself in disturbance, and not only for a short time, but you have to recap the whole plan and redress the mistakes for centuries, like the cases we've seen, for example, recently in the books, for example, by André Luiz, Action and Reaction. One mistake today can postpone your progress, as he says in one of the chapters, chapter 13, that at standstill. It's about postponing your progress. You have to be, in that case, one of the spirits for 300 centuries, redressing the mistakes before he continues on the right track. I mean, why do you want to suffer this much because you made wrongdoings? Why? If you are aware of it, right? Of course.
Well, exactly, and I think this is a very good example. And we have other examples in the book Liberation, for example, by André Luiz. You see, in the end, in the final chapter, where they rescue a spirit that's been thousands of years, doing a lot of evil things, and in the end, love is going to bring you back. And I think this is a really powerful message for all of us too. We always have to, go out there, share love and do the best we can. Exactly.
So right now, Marco, we're going to listen to Leoncio's case, which is quite dramatic, to exemplify. It's not about the particular nuances, but it's about now what happens to us spiritist workers, practitioners, when we deviate, when we are not attentive. What can be the ways and means in which we can fall in the traps of obsession? Let us listen to the case, and we're going to continue discussing. If you have any question or any comment, you can write at Kardec Radio, directly to the email kardecradio@gmail.com, or go to the chat room at blogtalkradio.com/Kardec Radio And in the chat room of the show live, we can listen from you as well. Again, our phone number is 858-769-4705 if you're listening to this live. If you're not, and you're listening to this on demand, you can always send us your question and or your suggestion, because we are open to suggestions as well. So let us listen to Leoncio's case, and we'll be back discussing it.
Leoncio's case.
In one of the aisles of the spiritual hospital Esperanza, Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, together with a psychotherapist, was visiting some of the patients. They got into one of the patients' room and observed an approximately 60-year-old man. He had a serious complexion and seemed to be convalescent. We greeted him with kindness, and he was happy to talk to us. After a while, he was given permission by a psychotherapist to tell me the story of his last reincarnation.
Well, Dr. Miranda, my story is not a very happy one. My last reincarnation happened more than 7 years ago in a good family where love and duty were truly present. My parents were religious and cultivated the sense of religion in all of us as well. When I enrolled in college, I became interested in the phenomena of mediumship and paranormality. I then started studying several different philosophies until I finally found Spiritism. I became a writer and worked in a newspaper where I could also write about Spiritism. I actually did more than that. I became an advocate of Spiritism. I got married to a devoted wife who helped me much, but I had serious personality problems such as arrogance and selfishness, which poisoned the best of my feelings. As a spiritist speaker, I often abused of my status to attack those who I felt like enemies. Soon I became negative, aggressive, and unlikable. Through my argumentative posture, I wrote articles attacking and accusing, really engaging in sterile discussions.
You now realize that there was no need for it, right?
Correct. Death showed me that the arguments and competitions were fruit of vanity and ego. Then I became detested by others. I didn't realize that obsession was taking me over. Obsession actually deepened when I felt attracted by a young medium of the Spiritist Center. Soon after, we committed adultery, and we were caught in it. Distraught by the scandal, we were gently asked out of the center, and I left my family. The young lady became an easy prey of the obsessors and fell into deep disturbance and illness, discarnating soon after. Feeling deeply guilty, I decided to move to another city, and I abandoned my spiritual duties.
But the spiritual duties would have helped you when you needed them the most.
Right, doctor, but spiritually obsessed, I also started drinking alcohol. I felt even guiltier when I got to know that my wife discarnated. Since my friends abandoned me, I started living amongst those who used alcohol as well. Deeply depressed, I drank too much and I fell ill. I discarnated in poor conditions. And the worst came after discarnation. I was harassed by enemies of previous reincarnations when we were involved in holy wars. I brutally suffered until I was rescued by a kind expedition of the spirit of the Queen Isabel of Portugal, the Holy Queen, and Dr. Euripides Barçanufo. All these thanks to the prayers of my mother and my wife, who actually forgave all my wrongs.
Yeah, dear Leoncio, please rest now. You know that God is good and just, and He will grant you another opportunity to redeem your heart. Your lesson is for us a reminder that grave is our behavior when we want to change the world without focusing on our inner change. Wow, this is unbelievable, right, Marcus? It talks to us about where is, in this case, let us identify, as he says, Dr. Miranda, reporting to us, where are the open doors for this incarnated mind to fall into obsession. He says he had some form of arrogance and selfishness in his heart that actually poisoned the best of him. He started feeling like he was better than others just because he wrote, and he was competent in some ways. And this is what happens to us. Sometimes we feel we are competent, so competent that we start despising people who seem to be less. And Marco, forgive me for extending this much, because I know you have great insights to share with us, but I want to say this case about Chico Xavier when he was, this is in one of the books, Beautiful Cases of Chico Xavier, Lindos Casos de Chico Xavier by Ramiro Gama. He talks about this passage when Chico and his brother were going to a cave in the neighborhood to find a special herb that would treat one of the people that was ill in the center. And as they were doing this small expedition, they brought a dog with them. They had a dog named Lord. And along the way, while they had to walk a little bit to get to this place, they were talking about the Spiritist Center, and they were making comments about a few of the people. They're saying, that person is a little bit strange. I don't know. That other one seems to be a little weird. And then his mother, their mother actually, appeared in spirit and said, if I were you guys, I wouldn't be making these not very charitable considerations about the people in the center. And Chico, in those years, was just learning his pathway into this. So that's the beauty of it as well. He grew so much as an individual and a spiritist worker. And they went into the cave, and something happened with the light that they were using. They were in total darkness, and they lost their pathway back out of the cave. So they started praying, and then his mother came along and said, let the dog guide you guys around, because he has his instinct, and you got it out. So they got out of the cave, and when they got out, the mother appeared again and said, you see, this is a lesson for you. You never undermine anybody because they seem to be less superior than you are, because they may be the very way out of your own inner cave. It's quite amazing. That would be probably the greatest preventative for all of us if we're feeling just like Leoncio, right, Marcus?
Yes, I think this is a really amazing, powerful passage, and like you said, we should always project good feelings and thoughts and good energies to anyone, and not ever judge another person, especially in Spiritist Center, where we're all there to help one another. You know, if we have, you see, the most wise, the most elevated spirits we've ever seen in this planet are probably the ones that are the most humble, the most hard workers, and I think this is also a very good example for us. You know, and you know, it's especially for us in the Spiritist Center. We have passages from the book Aconteceu na Casa Espírita, or It Happened in the Spirit Center, where they describe exactly how spirits take advantage of our own mistakes and our own negative feelings and ideas to actually start to get their way into the Spirit Center and start obsessive process, along many people, and actually disorganize the whole structure of the Spirit Center. And one of the ways they do that actually is trying to catch on our more rudimentary understanding of our sexual understanding and relationships, that we still, the instinct that we're still not 100% able to understand and to use it. So they take advantage of that, and they make people start these relationships within Spirit Center, like we saw in this case. There are many others, of course. There are many other ways they can do that, but we leave a lot of open doors, and that's why we should always practice what we learn, what we understand, and be humble, even though we may know a lot. But that doesn't mean anything if our moral component is not developed to the same level.
Exactly. And as he says to us at the end, if we want to change the world like Leoncio was doing, that's when he opened the door. As he describes the case, where did he open the door? When he was doing good work, imagine at the time, we can probably imagine he was pioneering in the dissemination of Spiritism in the newspapers in Brazil, and he was publishing a lot of articles about Spiritism in mainstream journals. So he was like striking in so many ways, being a pioneer in some way and form. So that pride took him over, and he started judging people, who is doing less, who is doing more, creating animosity, and then imposing changes and transformations. And he forgot that we all have a past. If in this life we behave this way, imagine in previous lives. And then he discloses that personality is a feature of previous lives when he was fighting the holy wars, doing the same, like accusing, demanding, imposing, thinking he was right, working more in trying to change others than change ourselves. And he says at the end, it's always easier to demand on others, impose onto others, watch others' behaviors, other than being vigilant and demanding with our own selves. So it's amazing, because that's when he really opened the doors for the influence of the spirits to come and send him to the abyss of his wrongdoing with adultery. Adultery is not the cause of the problem. Adultery, as Spiritism is showing to us here, is already the byproduct of spiritual obsession. Period. Right, Marcus?
No, exactly. And, well, you see how things starts to go downhill from the point where your pride, your selfishness kicks in and allows you to be subject to these situations. And one of the downstream, one of the end points of the process, you'll see it's alcoholism, and we have many other drug addictions. In our society today, this is interesting because many of these things are still somehow overlooked, or some of them are not accepted, but still people think it's okay for you to do certain things in our society. And that actually helps, you go into that pathway, because you may convince yourself that, drinking 4 or 5 drinks a day is okay, because society thinks it's fine. And then the obsessors are doing a great job now, because they're not only using your pride to get access to that, and now they're using your own understanding of what is right or wrong in a society to force you to go into processes like alcoholism and drug addictions and many other addictions that are not related to drugs. So it's a very intricate, elaborate mechanism. But in the end, it all started with the same 2 things that we talk like all the time: pride and selfishness. Mm-hmm. If we're able to control that, probably we'll avoid all the downstream endpoints of everything that it starts from there. And how we do that? Well, we know the recipe, right? That's what Jesus tried to tell us so many years ago, and we still struggle to understand. And then Spiritism comes and brings it in a very, very understandable and clear scientific point of view and philosophically, but many of us still don't understand. Even when we read it and we know it, like this case, he was a spirit center, he was a spiritist, so he knew it. Now your responsibility goes way up, and that's where, you have to really be careful, because, of course, you're going to be target, and you have to really be careful and control that.
It's fascinating. And as you're talking about the mechanisms, in one of the chapters of this book, that's why we would recommend it to whomever reads in Spanish or in Portuguese, and I know it's also in French already, not in English yet because we're translating. In a group effort, actually, the Spirit Society of Virginia and the Spirit Society of Baltimore, the book, Torments of Obsession, it talks about the mechanisms of obsession. It always starts with a form of mental fixation in a single idea, like Leoncio. He starts thinking, he's better than everybody else, people are not doing the best that they can, etc., etc. And then the discarnate entities, as Dr. Miranda says, they always around the spiritual enemies, he says. There's a whole chapter he talks about in these very terms. They take charge of the mind of the obsessed person, manipulating it and creating inconsistent habits. And there, if we don't put a stop, we derail and go into this abyss of obsession. There's always hope. Though Leoncio lost that reincarnation in that sad way, he is now, in the book, we learn the report of his true account. He was being recovered in the afterlife and will receive another opportunity as he will need to start again, etc. So the lesson for us, as Marco is saying, is to focus. How can I be more humble and more altruistic? Instead of saying less selfish and less prideful, let's say more humble and more altruistic. How can we practice being? So, Marcos, let us share some practical tips here that comes to our minds now. Ways and means we can practice little by little being less selfish and less prideful.
Well, I think if I can say one thing is that we have to always think about others. Think about how others feel when you're doing certain things to them. Put in your position of someone else. Trying to understand the difficulties of the other person, and that's where normally we look inside of us and try to find again excuses of why are we doing this and why should we do this or not. So really, the reality is that we have to think about others, help others, because that's how you get the most out of it. Is that when you're helping, and then we have research showing that. It's not for the help. It's all about when you're helping someone, you're the one receiving a lot of this energy back. Exactly on the same case you described by Chico Xavier. So I think that's one key point. I think the other point I would say is not only read things, because we read a lot. We have access to information today. So it's not an excuse anymore to say that we don't have access to information, because even by doing this show today, that's exactly what we're doing, and it's readily available for everyone. But just reading it and not translating it and not incorporating it into who you are, that it doesn't really mean anything, because it turns into an empty knowledge, and that really not going to take you any further, because you're not really doing what you believe in and what you're reading. I think that's another very important point. And always I think the third, especially in Spirit Center, always pay attention to what people say about you. Like, be open to be criticized. Do not think you're so good that you can't be criticized. And I think that's one of the pathways that many people go wrong, because, again, we think we're so good, we don't allow it to be criticized, and that's a very bad thing, because then it's so easy for you to be fascinated, and fascination, we know, it's a huge pathway for you to go into a very, very complex obsession.
Exactly, and you're so right. So if people also want to know, as you talked about fascination, they want to know more about obsession and the levels, they can go read the Medium's book, chapter 23. It talks about the whole 9 yards of it. And let us not forget, we're here on sharing some tips. Prayer is a good way for us to always recharge. And, as Leoncio showed to us, what is the point of creating disputing points of view? Because that's one of his problems with pride. He was disputing. He was creating animosity. That's why, Marco, as you know, in the Spiritist magazine, as the editor-in-chief, we receive a strong command by the mentors, one of them being Benjamin Franklin, saying, never use the magazine or even the radio to attack anyone. Never. No matter if the person here or there is doing serious wrongdoing, we do not use means of communication to attack anyone. So we need to refrain. And we're not here to rule and to judge anybody. We cannot use internet, emails, or anything to accuse others, to attack others, even if they are doing the worst mistake of their lives. That's not how it works. We don't go by that way. So this is one of the ways we can also practically, using internet today, Facebook, emails, Twitter, whatever it is, social networks, using it only to illuminate and inspire. Like Chico Xavier, he never spent 1 minute of his life to accuse anybody. He only used, and he was a powerful source of information, and really he could rule many people's lives if he wanted. He never used that power he had in his hand as a medium to attack or to create dissension and discord, separating people, etc., etc. So we really need to be fully aware, because if not, we're going to be just like Leoncio. He used the power he had temporarily in his mind and in his hands with the press and the spiritist press to create problems. And that really created a cascade of events for him that were unprecedented. So, Marcus, what would be your final comments regard to this amazing book before we go for the segment of our friends at Kardec Radio today?
I think my final comments were this, and again, first I would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here today and discussing some of these topics that I think are incredibly important for all of us. I think one of the most important things here is that first, this book and many other books, of course, they try to show us that obsession is something that happens on a daily basis everywhere, with everyone. We're all influenced in some way. Of course, we can be positively influenced too, but in many situations here on Earth, as incarnate spirits, and even between discarnate and discarnate spirits, and incarnates, we're negatively influenced, and we call that obsession if it's persistent. So it's very common. Like, it happens to everyone. So first, the first message is that, don't feel that you're immune, or don't feel that just because you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. Or don't feel that, because depending on what you believe in your religion, in your philosophical, scientific points of view, that's not going to happen to you just because certain of your beliefs just say that that's not possible. It's always happening. You don't need to call it obsession. You can call it different names and different traditions if you want, but believe that we can be, and we normally are, negatively influenced if we allow ourselves to be. And this is very common, and we have to be always vigilant. We have to be always doing the best we can in our part, not only to help this, but help others too, especially the obsessors. They're the ones suffering more than we are, actually.
You're so right. So, Marcos, we thank you so very much. We have no words to thank you so much for spending this time with us, helping us with the recordings, and also with these explanations. And thank you also for the beautiful segments every week. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Vanessa. God bless you guys at Kardec Radio and all the listeners. And this is what we're here for, to help one another. Maybe we grow up a little bit every day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, dear listener, we hope you have enjoyed. But this is just part of the show. Now we are going to share with you the beautiful segments that were prepared by Kirsten DeMello in Spiritist Moment, and also by Bernadette Liao. She has a beautiful passage for parents on how to teach your children to get rid of pride, because we need to learn from the very beginning. And then Nera Vinditi, a beautiful explanation for immigrants all over the world, and especially those in the United States, on how they can empower their lives and succeed in America. And then finally, we'll finish with the new segment, the new chapter on segment Got It Home by Naor Fonseca and Gabi Ferreira. And at the very end, we'll be here with you, praying together. That's a very important time for us. Let us stay together, close our eyes, no matter where you are. And then at the very end, we'll wrap up with the beautiful prayer to all of our obsessors and to all the ones who are going through obsession, no matter the level, who they are, etc. We need to help one another. Enjoy this beautiful segment now. We'll be back with you in a few.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. Today we want to continue to reflect about Part 3, Chapter 2 of the Spirit's Book, The Law of Worship, and a topic that is so interesting, although it seems quite old in the sense that it's been around forever, and it's the topic of prayer. Every religion and almost everyone across the globe just about knows at least the definition of what it might be or what it might be to them. So here we take the time out to study this part in the Spirit's Book and discuss it. We learn, first of all, what is prayer? Well, we know for sure it is, according to the Spirits, an act of worship. Why is it an act of worship? Well, it makes sense if you think about it. We're elevating our minds to God through praise, as the Spirits tell us that there are three things we do through prayer: praise, ask, and thank. So therein lies the answer to that. We know that we are worshiping God also through our prayers, alongside asking and thanking. So prayer is something quite simple, and perhaps some of us may have a preconceived idea or don't understand prayer or the power it has. Even perhaps some of us may say, oh, prayer doesn't work for me. I pray, nothing happens. Well, we don't know all the wrong or bad things that were avoided by our prayers or by the prayers of others. For sure, prayer does work. The Spirits tell us when we pray sincerely and with good intentions, God always sends us good spirits to assist us, sometimes by encouraging us to have more strength and courage to endure, or to give us some insights as to how to proceed in our lives. Prayer is something so interesting that even medicine today, and for the past 10 years, or even longer than that, we could say this. In medicine, they have begun to study the effects in prayer. We know as practitioners ourselves in hospitals that for sure many practitioners in alternative medicines and many different areas have begun to either use or contemplate the possibility and the power of prayer. Something for us to think about, as Kardec always was very didactic and always tried to use modern day occurrences and connect it with Spiritism. So we go back to the Spirit's Book. And something quite interesting. Well, we know that prayer is an act of worship. But does God like us praying? Is it, and as Kardec poses the question, is prayer pleasing to God? And the answer is quite interesting. And the Spirits tell us that actually it is when the words are spoken from the heart, and they tell us intent is everything to God. Our intentions are everything to God. And that a prayer from the heart is much more powerful than a prayer that is simply read. And a quick highlight from the Spirit's Book in understanding prayer. We know what prayer is, and we know that through prayer we can do three things. We can praise, we can ask, or we can thank God. And we know that prayer indeed does make us better people. And we know that we pray with great faith and confidently. It can strengthen us to overcome our mistakes, our issues, to find strength, because we know that God always sends us the good, noble spirits to help us during that time. But as always, Kardec covers all the bases, and they tell us that it's not that praying a great deal that is essential, but to pray rightly. So what does that mean? The Spirits explain to us the following, that sometimes people think that it's how long they pray and how much that's going to make them a good person. But yet they don't pay attention to their defects. They shut their eyes to self-examination. And the Spirits wisely say, in question 660A, in the answer, they say, it is not the remedy that is ineffectual, but the manner in which it is applied. So it's quite interesting. So it's not that prayer doesn't help those people, it's that they use it incorrectly. So it's a suggestion for all of us that let us utilize prayer to find strength, to understand ourselves, our neighbor, to help one another. When we know of someone who's going through a difficulty, no matter what they've done to us or to others, because we are all creatures of God, let us remember that, to apply the remedy correctly in our own personal lives, this idea of self-examination. First, oftentimes we're so busy thinking about how the other person should change that we forget about ourselves. The spirits remind us in question 660a, let us examine ourselves. And one very important thought for us to remember about prayer, especially if we are going through a spiritual disturbancy, an obsession, whether ourselves or someone else is going through an obsession, prayer is so vital to our recuperation, regeneration, and assistance. It is part of the therapy, both for the obsessed and the obsessors. Do we know that we could pray for our own obsessors? Do we know we could pray for the obsessors of others? Or just for people that are ill, whom we think are ill, or those who are trying to harm us? Prayer is so useful in that way. And it is something that in today's world, people don't know about. You'd say in everyday life, people don't realize that. But it's something that Spiritism brings to us as one of the most vital tools for our everyday lives. The use of prayer in these obsessive processes. Food for thought, dear listeners. We encourage you to go and read the text yourself in the Spirit's book. And until next week, we wish you many blessings.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Liao, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and Spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today, we will answer 3 questions about pride in children. First question, is there any negative effect of a parent being proud of his child? What a joy when parents see their children accomplishing something they worked really hard. It is natural to say, I am very proud of you. And we know the feeling when someone says it to us. The words, I am proud of you, imply that parents, relatives, or friends recognize and approve the child's achievement and success. When those words are expressed with a sincere feeling of love and joy, showing appreciation for someone's hard work and achievement, they are positive and have an encouraging effect. The danger and negative side of it is when pride goes beyond congratulating words and is nurturing children's heart by making them feel superior. This kind of pride is referred to hubristic, which comes from the Greek word hubris, meaning extreme pride or arrogance, and were related to actions that shamed or humiliated the victim for the pleasure or gratification of the abuser. The hubristic pride, contrary to the authentic pride, is the one that we should fight. When a child is too proud and feels superior to others, he is being judgmental and not looking at his own limitations and weaknesses. C.S. Lewis, a famous author and scholar, once said, "A proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you can see something that's above you." A child who becomes arrogant has a strong sense of self-importance and believes that he deserves special treatment. Also, he likes to brag about his talents and accomplishments. This type of behavior affects his relationship with other children who may feel inferior or annoyed with his sense of superiority. As a result, children would avoid playing or hanging out with him. Many of us adults have experienced how irritating it can be being around a braggart or a know-it-all for too long. Second question, what is the root of such pride? There have been many studies and researches trying to explain the origin and purpose of pride, and Spiritism can help us to understand it, explaining that the root of pride is found in selfishness. Question 785 of the Spirit's book mentions that pride and selfishness are the greatest obstacles to the moral progress. We learn with the Spiritist philosophy that we are spirits that reincarnate many lifetimes with the goal to improve ourselves. Each life experience offers wonderful opportunities for us to grow in love and knowledge. As a spirit in progress, we still have some negative tendencies that we bring from previous reincarnations, and pride is one of them. Therefore, the more we practice love one another and do to others what you would have them do to you, the more we will eradicate selfishness and pride from our hearts. Another strong cause for hubristic pride can be found in the child's upbringing. Some parents teach their children that they should take strong pride on their culture, belief, or religion. Sure, we should all be grateful for our roots and acknowledge our culture, but we have to be careful on how it is presented and nurtured in a child, because it can incite superiority, and he will develop the misconception that his cultural belief is better than others. This kind of pride can have serious consequences, leading to prejudice and racism. Many tyrants in the world's history acted with violence, causing serious pain and suffering to many people in the name of their pride. Also, if a parent has a strong hubristic pride, the child will pick up that behavior and will learn that sense of superiority. Carl Jung explains that children are educated by what the grown-up is, and not by his talk. Sports can also reinforce negative pride on children. Some parents take competition too serious, abusing and push their children to their limits, inflicting emotional and physical distress on them. There are cases in which parents transfer their own passion for a sport onto the child and want him to fulfill their dreams. For some parents and coaches, it is not enough that a child tries his best, but they want a child to be the best. The question is, why? What is a parent trying to prove to the family, neighbors, friends, or to himself? Sadly, we see parents selfishly living off their children's successes and achievements so they can show to the world that they have succeeded as a parent and feed their pride, not thinking of the damage that it could be causing to their children. Beauty pageants is another typical example of parents fulfilling their desires through their young children who cannot make their own choices yet, imposing on them their passion and taking away precious time from their childhood. In addition, children develop a great deal of competition in their heart, pride, and early sensuality. They learn to give too much value to their physical beauty, unfortunately forgetting about more important ones, the spiritual and the moral. When those children grow up, they will have serious problems with relationships and working with others. Plus, they will struggle dealing with life challenges, not knowing what to do if by any chance anything happens to their possessions, performance, or to their body. Third question, how can I combat hubristic pride? with humbleness of heart. Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew says, "Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." What a great example of humility Jesus was. He was never boastful, but instead he used all his love and power to serve and heal the sick. And he continues in Mark saying, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all." Parents, teach your children how to be humble. Chapter 7 of the Gospel according to Spiritism reminds us that humility is a virtue much forgotten amongst us. For the little ones, you can start by using stories to illustrate humbleness and pride. Find a story that shows characters acting arrogantly, or you may create your own, making sure that it has some consequences. Then talk to your child about feelings, asking how he would feel if he was treated the way the character did in a story. Use some puppets or drawings to illustrate. And when you see your child behaving in a boastful way, remind him of the character's behavior from the story. Also, keep your eyes open to catch your child doing any kind of kindness and show recognition. It is easy to spot a child doing something negative, but it is important to notice when he is doing something good, reinforcing that behavior. So let's start nurturing humbleness in children's hearts. Help them to recognize not only their talents, but also their limitations and weaknesses, and how they can use their gifts to help others. Doing charity by serving the needy is a wonderful and inspiring way to open children's eyes to how to be grateful for what they have and can do. Teach them to respect everyone, accept differences, recognize when they make mistakes, and practice appreciating and expressing other people's talents, especially within the family group, friends, and schoolmates. These are great exercises and examples to help children to put into practice the virtue of humility. Kardec Radio listeners, pride can blind us. As we learn in Chapter 10 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, pride, being the father of many vices, is also the negation of many virtues. It is found to be the motive and base for almost all human actions. Therefore, it was because pride is the principal obstacle to progress that Jesus tried so hard to combat it. Following Jesus' example, we should make the effort to combat pride from our lives and practice being humble. We can start now, planting the seed of love and humbleness in our children, but keep in mind that the best way to teach your child to be humble is by being humble. And remember and reflect upon this famous saying, pride comes before a fall. Thanks for listening to Yes, and if you'd like us to answer any questions, please send an email to kardec@kardecradio.com.
We will return to our program after these messages. Do you find yourself with no time to stop and read or meditate about Spiritism or spirituality? We have a great solution for you. The audio CD called Unfolding Our Spiritual Nature, Path of Harmony by Ra Tashira is an enlightening CD with a question and answer session as well. Feel the enrichment and purchase your copy today at www.ssbaltimore.org. Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Learn more about indigo and crystal children with the book The New Generation, The Spiritist View on Indigo and Crystal Children by Devoto Franco with Vanessa Anzalone. Whether you're a parent or not, this book will enrich your mind. Go to www.ssbaltimore.org and click on Bookstore and purchase your copy today.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
Now we return to our program.
Hi, this is Nara Vendidi with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance, helping foreign-born and immigrant professionals succeed in the workplace. Our topic today is sound schwa. It is pronounced as in America, the first and last syllables, America. This is the most frequently occurring sound in conversational English. A strange word, schwa, isn't it? You're probably not familiar with the word, but it happens to be the most frequently occurring sound in conversational and spoken English. This includes spoken business English as well. That's why it's important to get it right. Interestingly enough, although there is no such a letter in English alphabet, it can be represented in spoken English by just about any vowel. Here is the rule. In American English, in almost any situation, unstressed vowel is pronounced as schwa or So remember, schwa is the name of the sound, and the way you pronounce it is Let me give you a few examples from the most common words used in business. Adapt, computer. By the way, not computer, how many foreigners say, but computer. Target, vision, not vision, vision, vision. Reduce, increase, action, success. Two words about the word success. This is one of the most difficult words to pronounce for Spanish speaking or just about for any native speakers in the world. Success, due to two challenges in the word. And one of the challenges is to pronounce success instead of success. Success is wrong, and I've heard it many times. Success. And then there are two sounds, K and S, which is sometimes difficult to pronounce together. But for now, practice the first sound, the first vowel actually, success. Now, how to pronounce or schwa? First of all, relax your lips, keep your mouth open, lower your jaw, and pronounce the sound deep in your throat. If you are not still sure how to pronounce the sound, you can watch video on succeedinamerica.com website. Now practice with me. Away, about, and, the, before a word starting with a consonant, by the way. The definite article. If it starts with the vowel, you say the. Luncheon, customer, connection, concern. So this is Nara Vendidi with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please email me at nara@succeedinamerica.com. That is Anna and Nancy, A-R-A @ spiritisminamerica.com. And thank you again for listening.
Good morning, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome to one more program of God at Home. I am Mauro Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. Today's lesson is number 23, entitled The Distracted Messengers, from the book Jesus in the Home by the Spirit Neo Lucio and psychographed by Chico Xavier.
During the gospel worship, there were discussions around controversies raised around faith in the various circles of Pharisaism, when Christ, with the profound simplicity that was his nature, narrated tolerantly the following story.
In order to understand the story, let's read in the Gospel according to Spiritism who were the Pharisees.
Pharisees, from the Hebrew, meaning division or separation. Tradition is an important part of Jewish theology. It consists of a compilation of the successive interpretations given to the scriptures that became articles for dogmas. Among scholars, this was the subject for interminable discussions, most of which were over simple questions as to the meaning of words and their form, just like theological disputes and subtleties of scholastics in the Middle Ages. From all this resulted different sects, each one wishing to have the monopoly of the truth and consequentially detesting one another, as so often happens. Among these sects, the most influential were the Pharisees.
A great ruler received alarming news about a large number of subjects who were being smitten by a deadly fever in a region far from the seat of his government. Wanting to help the wards who were suffering in that remote region of his kingdom, he decided to send them reliable messengers armed with the appropriate medicine for the situation and the means with which to bring them back to health.
The messengers left the palace with great promises to surely and efficiently do what the ruler had asked of them. But as soon as they were outside the ruler's gates, they began to quarrel about what route to take. Some demanded that they take the shortest path, others the briar-free plain. Still others preferred the passageway through the mountains. They wasted many days quarreling until the group finally disbanded, with each phalanx attending to its own whims and completely forgetting about the main objective. These problems, however, were not readily solved. Taking different routes merely increased the conflicts. Now reduced in number, the various expeditions suffered even more acutely the sterilizing blows of personal opinions. The travelers cared about nothing except to come up with new reasons for pointless friction.
Quarrels arose stemming from the smallest matters, which completely wasted the opportunity. And because of this, the travelers that had taken the short cut took as long as those who had taken the way through the plain and the foothills. Consequently, they ultimately all met up in the disease-ridden valley at the same time. To everyone's enormous and immeasurable disappointment, because of the lack of the supplies that had been promised, not one sick person was still alive. Death had devoured them one by one, while the arguing messengers wasted time along the way.
The Master gazed at the disciples with a very lucid look and added,
In this allegory, the world is being attacked by the plague of evil and disbelief, and we see the image of the bearers of heavenly medicine as those who represent the religious leaders of all of the organizations that speak in God's name. In spite of having received valuable resources from heaven for those who suffer and weep as a result of the ignorance and affliction reigning in the world, those who are enlightened by the wisdom of faith have disregarded the obligations that mark their lives. and valuing their own whims over the designs of the Supreme Lord, they go to extremes in all kinds of verbal altercations. While they feed disorder, carefree and distracted, those in need of light and help grow weak from the lack of aid and dedication.
And patting the head of one of the children at the meeting, and upon whom all hopes in the sublime future were focused, he concluded, smiling and calm.
As advantageous as discussion might be, it should never distract us from the work the Lord has given us to do.
Dear listener, right now we are here to invite you for a final prayer. We talked about torments of obsession. We talked about the ways in which on and off we make mistakes. We need to redress. Right now, let us pray then for us, for the obsessors, for everybody all together. And Kardec has beautiful prayers at the end of chapter 28 exactly about prayers for the obsessed, the obsessors, and for ourselves when we're feeling obsessed. Let us pray now, visualizing Master Jesus, the loving and kind, caring doctor of all of us, Master. You, better than anybody else, with God, know our past, but you also know our potential, which is divine. We all here, united, live or on demand, pray for forgiveness, for the mistakes, for the illusions. And we pray especially today for all those who are feeling obsessed and are working in the Spiritist movement. May they receive your loving embrace and feel that they still have time to go back to track. And animosity or discord has no room in our hearts. But we pray mostly now for our obsessors. Forgive us for calling them by this label, or for all those who persecute us with fair or unfair excuses. We pray because we know when we spend our time watching others, imposing and demanding on others, we're not happy. May they be happy, dear Lord. May your loving embrace caress their heads. And may we all be given an opportunity to work together and to help others who are suffering in this world that needs so much love, so much peace. Thank you, Master, for your loving messengers and for these very moments of true therapy for our souls. And so be it. Dear listener, we hope you have felt this loving embrace. May we all, wherever we are in this world, become disseminators of greater peace, of greater love, redressing always the mistakes and reminding us, as a great mind once said, when we change our minds for the better, it's a sign that we're using our thinking ability. Next week when we come back, we're going to have a true celebration, because it's going to be an interview with one of the greatest pioneers of the British Spiritist movement, our dear Janet Duncan. She's going to be here sharing with us her journey, her discoveries, her pathways, her challenges and joys. And we hope you listen to it, participate, send your questions beforehand if you want to kardecradio@gmail.com, or go to kardecradio.com. In our website we have a contact form so you can fulfill your wishes in regard to questions you want to ask her. If not, you can always send your suggestions as well. Remember, we are always here, just a click away from you. We hope you have a blessed day wherever you are, no matter if it's right now, here live on this Saturday, or any other day when you listen to this. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.